Sorry. All right, I did this or a version of this video yesterday for chapter 2. It was late at night, and really this chapter is twice as long as the last chapter, and the last video was over 40 minutes. And I still didn't, let me turn this off. I still didn't get everything that I wanted to get to. So really, I'm hoping that you will read the chapter with me so we don't have to go into every detail. But either way, I still want to hit some notes. So I'm going to have my book in hand a little bit. If I don't look at the camera as much, that is because I'm trying to really focus on what's in this book. So anyway, it starts as the chapter You Cannot Hope. And what a chapter that is in ingraining the ethic that is being built within Thomas' covenant. I don't think it was always this way, but certainly some things are being ingrained in the guy, and he's practicing some specific things to the nth degree. And in doing this, you know, I'm very interested in this so that when we get to a couple of these moments, you know, it will resonate throughout the book, but when we get to a couple of these moments, I'm trying so hard to see why he, you know, fell for that trap of doing some of those things that he does. Because, again, I don't think most of us would even consider doing something like that. But he has a few major character flaws, even though, at least in these first two chapters, in a lot of ways, he's kind of being built up as, you know, a flawed but a character who loved his wife and, you know, misses her, I guess. We'll go into these different things, and I'm wondering what your opinion is, especially on their relationship before she leaves, and then obviously now she's gone. But it seemed like it was a very abrupt sort of event, and she's just out of there. So the first thing is You Cannot Hope, and that's going to be at the baseline of everything with him. It's almost like there's a few things. Don't hope for a better life. Be focused ultimately on this VSE. And when he's in this leprosarium, it's almost like he can memorize the stuff they're talking about. And he's kind of frustrated that they're going over the mental health aspects of it because it just doesn't seem practical to him. But everything with him is almost like getting rid of your creative wonder or fantasy sort of side, which is interesting that it seems so on the nose as you're reading it this second time. But yeah, very interesting. And then the other side is, you know, it often will drive people to their own destruction. So the mental health aspect is very tricky because people don't want anything to do with you. You have to come to terms with coping. You have to cope with being alone, and then a number of other things. But let's just go into it. I will try this again, see if we can get through a little quicker. Not by speaking quicker, but maybe not reading as many passages and whatnot. So anyway, you didn't even see that other video anyway. So, okay. Remember, this boy showed up pointing at this old man, or I assume he's old. And then he had the sign, beware, and now this boy is gone. He just kind of vanishes. And then he gives himself a quick VSE, you know, a visual whatever check, you know. And we're going to go into some moments where we kind of flash back. He's still on his way to pay his bill, and then we have these flashbacks of before and during the leprosarium. So as this is, you know, he kind of snaps out of it looking at this boy, then he's back on his way, and then he bumps into somebody. And this is where you find a little bit of the dual sort of thing that's a part of him now. It is the man that had been Joan's lawyer in the divorce. And so immediately he feels this dismay, thinking about that, of that loss, and he feels a bit of a shame for having such. He felt involuntarily ashamed to be the cause of such dismay, and for a moment he could not recollect the conviction which had brought him into town. But as soon as he does, and he remembers, hey, I think it's interesting, this point that people are paying for his phone bill and his giving him groceries, because any other person might perceive that as them serving him when he's going through this thing, and he's taking it as none less than cutting him off from society, which is that would be brutal too. That would be brutal. He says they have no right, and he writes this poem in his head, this really dark poem that ends with, bodies jerk like puppet corpses, and hell walks laughing. He's just always focused on his death, from the first time he wakes up in the morning to when he goes to bed. It's just about prolonging his own death. He wonders when the last time he has laughed. Was it with Joan? Was it with Roger? Was it with the last time his book came out? Like, what are all of his laughs done in his life? Has he had them all? Brutal. So there is a turning point. Going to Joan. Remember, he wrote this bestseller, and then it was 6 months later, I think, when Roger came. And then 6 months after that, and he still hadn't made any headway. He hadn't really written at all for another book. Remember, Joan has just given away her, she stopped working as a horsebreaker, and now they have a kid to supply or to provide for. And it's terrible, because I think this is a very natural point. I could see me and my spouse in Joan and Thomas here, not in that situation, but when we were just newly married, there's times where one of us is in school and one working, and then kind of the other way around. And if somebody's, spending too much, which Thomas is doing here, that causes a lot of tension. But Thomas is spending a lot of his money that he's gotten, and he got a lot of it, but that will dry up if you don't have some sort of extra source. So she's trying to push him to go along. And even then, it says that she left him, not completely, but she left him at the house. She took Roger, and basically this was the pivot point in a lot of what happens. But it was the moment the rock had begun rolling towards his feet of clay, he says. He had heard the warnings, and he had ignored them. And it seems like he had heard the warnings and ignored them of his leprosy, but also kind of in the close of maybe their relationship. And that's why I wanted to ask you. He in the narration, even though it's not first person, the narration is kind of talking about Joan leaving with Roger as this very strong thing that Joan did. And he does acknowledge that she's right. Like she and Roger are a distraction right now, or not a distraction, but he needs to focus. And so they're leaving, and she says, like, when I get back, you better have something. You better have written something. And he's kind of he's kind of writing it in the narration almost as if her heart is aching as well, and about not wanting to leave Roger alone. But, it could either be that she's doing this and then she just is going to miss him, or she's like, I'm going, do something, and then she's just like, I can't take it. So what do you think about their relationship at this point? Because I'm not totally sure. Anyway, he starts typing. His fingers are getting numb. He stamps his feet. and then there's a little numb purple spot at the base of his pinky finger on his right hand. When she comes home, they embrace. Let's see, this will give us maybe more clues. Joan brought home Roger after 3 weeks of family visits. She did not notice anything wrong until that evening when Roger was asleep and she sat in her husband's arms. The storm windows were up and the house was closed against the chill winter wind which prowled the farm. In the still air of the living room, she caught the faint, sweet, sick smell of Covenant's infections. Oh, man. She just hops up. She flips out at him for not taking care of himself. Another thing that probably, I never like going to the doctor for things that might, could be something else. And so I think a lot of people are the same way as Thomas. And that could either be just denial, or it could be fear of, I think it's all kind of wrapped in, or just thinking it's nothing. It's nothing. But the warning signs were there. She drives him in, which I think is another kind of inclination that she is sort of the rock of getting things moving in the family a little bit. She drives him there, even though I guess it would make sense if she would, because doesn't have numb fingers and stuff, so that would make sense. But I think we get a lot of their relationship that was happening before this from some of these hints. It was preliminary. The preliminary diagnosis was gangrene, and he's now taken to the room for surgery. And she was there the whole time with him. And then when he comes out of surgery, she's not there. And it's all the way until noon. She arrived in his room the following morning, and she was changed. They had found out that it was leprosy. She walks into the room, and it describes her as her back to the room, to the wall, and she almost can't even project her voice, because even that will be like getting too close to Thomas. And she's saying, this is the end. I can't risk it. It's catching, and especially with children, and she wants to be out of there. And she does. She doesn't even go home to get all her stuff. When he gets home, the stuff's just there. But basically, that's the end, and she's out of his life, just like that. Was there, wakes up out of surgery. He has leprosy, and she's gone. Brutal. What would that do to a guy? And I'm not, not in the way of blaming Joan or, but what would that do to a guy? Holy smokes. Really brutal. So, 48 hours later, he is being pronounced ready to travel and sent to a leprosarium in Louisiana. When he gets there, he's very vacant and whatever, maybe still in shock a little bit. And the doctor says, I don't think you understand what's happening, Mr. Covenant. Come with me. And they show him the other primary case in the hospital. And if you've read this, it's just so awful. He goes through the threshold to this patient's room, and it's just this terrible reek of, it's the smell of rotting flesh lying in a latrine. Yuck. And he lifts his arms up, this guy, and he's just melting and stubs, what was it? Stumps for fingers, and half his foot's gone. And it's just terrible. His eyes and his face, and just this reek. And the guy, almost as if he's going to embrace him, lifts his arms and says, basically, this is you. Like, this is what you have to look forward to. Kill yourself. It'll be better than this. And that just breaks Thomas. He goes and he throws up, and in that way, he decides immediately here to survive. And that's when, he's going to change some things, where he goes into this survival mode, but at what expense? And so that's a part of what we're discovering in this series, it seems like. It's certainly in this first book. He's creating some new habits. So, like I mentioned before, he's going to learn some things from the physicians. They'll tell him a number of things, including that they just don't know how this spreads. For a million years or however long people have had leprosy, and in all these different cultures, the people who have leprosy are always the pariahs. It's not a romantic sort of, this disease can't be romanticized, and it never is. And so they always just become social pariahs to the extreme, and people always think that it is contagious. And the doctors here are walking around amongst the lepers, and they're saying, no, it's not contagious. And might not even be for children as well. And that's going to come up a little bit later in this chapter. Not even for children as well. And it's not fatal. So really, other than the smell and the sight of it, people can get on living around someone with leprosy, which the first time I read through this book, I didn't know that might be the case, that it's not contagious, right? So that's part of why he's leaving the city, not to make everyone, or why he's leaving his house to go pay his bills, not to endanger everyone, but at times he says, it's not contagious, you guys. Just let me live on. So that's a big detail, right? Again, he doesn't want to open up to them about his mental health and things. And they warn him and all the other lepers that, relationships are the first thing to be a major struggle in someone's life. They have this desperate need of human support. Now, if you've read the book, you know what's coming. You know what's coming in terms of the type of place he's going to be in. It seems in a lot of ways that he has like everything he could even ask for. It's like an Eden there in some ways. And is that going to change? Is that going to change the way he thinks, or is he going to keep having this wall between him? Which is so interesting. Like he's getting the info of how the rest of his life is going to go. And then again, it's just very interesting that way, because it's not going to go exactly that way. So let's keep going. This is important here. The patients who survive often will lose their motivation. They will often be driven towards, self-destruction. And one will say this, and this was kind of echoed at the very start of the book. Whichever way you go, however, one fact will remain constant. From now until you die, leprosy is the biggest single fact of your existence. It will control how you live in every particular. From the moment you awaken until the moment you sleep, you will have to give your undivided attention to all the hard corners and sharp edges of life. And I think that's kind of a, you can take it as the physical, but also he's taking this, in a mental way and in other ways. You can't take vacations from it. You can't try to rest yourself by daydreaming, lapsing, and we've seen him already do that. Anything that bruises, bumps, burns, breaks, scrapes, snags, pokes, and weakens you can maim, cripple, or even kill you. So what a shell he's making for himself. And thinking about all the kinds of life you can't have can drive you to despair and suicide. I've seen it happen. So people who have hope that they'll still be treated or something will still happen, they're saying, no, there's no cure to this. You have to adapt mentally and get ready to cope with a really hard life. And so, yeah, and if you think of the life that you're missing, that you could have, or what you're missing out on, it's just going to drive you crazy. And so he keeps doing that occasionally, but then he squashes it with his bitterness and vitriol. The other problem is it often will drive people to self-destruction, as I mentioned. He'll have, even in his dreams, he thinks about it all day, and his nightmares still go over the same process. It's like he's been reading. I don't know if that happens to you when you read late at night or watch a movie a little past when you should, when you're just exhausted, and then your brain keeps kind of playing that stuff over. He is living this unending cycle day after day after day. And I wonder what that would do to a person. They consider that that the illness has been arrested, so at least it's kind of plateaued. They send him home. He goes to look at what he's written when Joan had left. When he was locked away for a while, and it's just terrible. He thinks it's just the worst thing, and his imagination has been forcefully just kind of destroyed. I do want to mention also here, I think I missed it. Where was that? They mention how, people are biological. They're biological beings. And so touch is the thing that is another part that just can become very disorienting. Your eyes can deceive you, your ears can deceive you, but if you touch it, it's real. And so again, knowing maybe some of what happens later in this book, it's an interesting clue, because if you still have those senses or whatever, like people who do touch, what makes them disbelieve, or people who, thinking of the second book, we have a blind man, and what would their experience be like, different than Thomas's. So I don't want to go too far into that, because I don't want to get into like spoiler type stuff, but we do have, all of this is just setting up, it's setting up the next portion, the meat of this book, really, really well. And so touch is so a part of us that even our emotions are described as being, we feel a certain way. Someone made us feel a certain way, or our heart was touched. And so they're saying you have to become a purely intellectual type of creature to see all the dangers around you and remove them, and be very careful with what you dare to hope about. And brutal. So he goes home, he locks away everything with hard edges. He just sanitizes. It's just a blank, empty existence, shell of an existence. He locks away everything and throws away the key. Now, I wonder if we can just skip some of this. It takes us back to him on his way to paying his bill. He notices this girl, that the teller or whatever, the person working there, and notices her body again, because that's just the viewpoint that he's numb, and that's what he's longing for. So let me see. He makes these walks through a tree. He has this ritual sort of thing when he feels kind of separate from, when he needs to get grounded again. He takes his straight razor that he used to shave with, and he puts it up to his neck, and that's like a little bit of he can reclaim that, I guess, and it's almost like a little pendant for him. He feels sad that he can't touch the bark of a tree and feel anything. And here, he became convinced that he needed to take some action. He was a person, human like any other. He didn't want to just sit at home and wallow away and get groceries delivered. Like, what kind of life is that? He was kept alive by a personal heart. The heart will come into play at the very end of this chapter, but he's pointing at his heart. He did not mean to stand by and approve this amputation. You can take everything away from me, but I'm going to be in control of my own heart. This book, if you didn't know what was coming for the rest, this really could go a number of ways. Like, he could become a very great noble and, someone that we look up to, or it could go totally different ways, right? And he is, man, to me, it's just like this is a very human type of book because it's touching on some of the most awful things that could happen to a person, but if experiences, yeah, we just see what he does with it, and it's almost always terrible. It almost always seems to be like the worst thing you can do. He goes and is there to pay his thing. While he's sitting there, he takes out the little page that the boy had told him to read, a little clipping, a little printing, and it says this, which is interesting. And another thing that makes you wonder if he's reading this little clipping, and that is going to that's going to kind of influence things from the rest of the book that might be having in his head, or is it like a prophecy sort of thing where this is going to tell him a lot of kind of the types of stuff that are in his future? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it just ingrained in him that this is just such a weird idea? Anyway, I wish we could talk about it by really going into everything, but I think I've already implied enough, right? So it says this: a real man, real in all the ways that we organize as real, finds himself suddenly abstracted from the world and deposited in a physical situation which could not possibly exist. Sounds have aroma, smells have color and depth, sights have texture, touches have pitch and timbre. There he is informed by a disembodied voice that he has been brought to that place as a champion for his world. He must fight to the death in single combat against a champion from another world. If he is defeated, he will die. Which is an interesting note. And his world, I'm just thinking of something else in the book. And his world, the real world, will be destroyed because it lacks the inner strength to survive. That makes me think of, okay, that'll be an interesting thing to bring up much later in this book. The man refuses to believe that what he is told is true. He asserts that he is either dreaming or hallucinating, and declines to be put in the false position of fighting to the death where no real danger exists. He is implacable in the determination to believe his apparent situation. Again, like if he doesn't believe it exists, he's not going to go on these adventures and things. If he's not going to fight back with the person if it's not real, and does not defend himself. Okay, hold on. He is implacable in the determination to disbelieve his apparent situation and does not defend himself when he is attacked by the champion of the world. Question: is the man's behavior courageous or cowardly? This is the fundamental question of ethics. And he says, ethics. Covenant snorted to himself. Who the hell makes up these things, or makes these things up? So, very interesting. Ethics is going to be a big part of it. If he doesn't believe it's real, what kinds of things can he play out and not be like a bad person for doing that, right? If he's just playing it out in his mind and he feels, is he in this delusion world? What are his commitments in a world like that? So very interesting. Again, I'm trying to really figure out his baseline ethics so that when he gets to some of these things, not that we agree with him, but that we get that it is true to his character, I guess. And even though it's to a fault. So, he keeps going onward, keeps having this inward narrative about everyone around him. He wants to spit at this girl saying like, it's not catching. But he says, it isn't catching, You won't get it from me. There's nothing to worry about. It isn't catching, except for children. So, I mean, that I thought maybe I didn't catch that, but I'm pretty sure the doctor said it isn't It doesn't catch with children either. So, I mean, that's just a way to freak her out maybe a little bit. He turned away with as much dignity as he could manage and strode out into the sunlight. And he was giddy with rage. And we're getting to the end of this chapter where, again, he sees that old man that was looking up in the sunlight. And he has a little bit of compassion for the guy because he's just kind of wearing this ragged stuff. And he's still mumbling and whatever, and he still has this bowl and staff. And then when he gets close to Covenant, or when Covenant gets close to this guy, the man's voice alters a little bit, and it says, "Give." Give what? I guess give money. And this frustrates. This frustrates Covenant, and is another thing where we are getting to know what makes him tick. At this point, he's very self-centered by that's his default setting as a way of self-preservation. And he's, he doesn't owe him anything, and he's coerced to anger. But finally, he's about to pull away and leave, and the man says, "I have warned you." It makes Thomas angry again, and he takes off his ring, which is his only connection to himself, to his wife, to any sort of life. Remember, the doctor said not to dwell on things from the life that you could have or are missing and things like that. And so he puts it into the bowl. Very interesting, that Donaldson. Like, it's so interesting what is happening. It's not just a portal fantasy. Like, this white ring is at the center again of this book. And the man says, wait, and wants to hold on to Covenant and keep him there. Covenant says, "Don't touch me. I'm a leper." And the old man's voice was clear and sure. It changed again, saying, "You are in perdition, my son." "No, old man, that's what life is like." So young and bitter, and already so bitter. Like, this man's trying to. It's very interesting, this little relationship they're having. And I know I say it's very interesting a lot, so sorry about that. "Come on, old man. We didn't make the world. All we have to do is live in it. We're all in the same boat, one way or another." "Did we not?" said the old man. And then suddenly, the beggar went back to humming his weird tune, and then a new quality came into his voice, an aggressive tone that took advantage of Covenant's unexpected vulnerability. I think of a deep, kind of devilish tone. "Why not destroy yourself?" is what he says. And he wanted to jerk away from the old man. Remember, they were warned that no matter what you do, if your mental health, everyone starts to kind of, with this leprosy, starts to kind of get driven towards this mental destruction. And there will be delusions and things that happen that will kind of convince you towards that sort of thing. And it'll push you along. And so he throws that out there. And this man, his voice gets back to the other way, and he gives back Covenant's ring. Gives it back. He says, "Take back the ring. Be true. You need not fail." That is his mandate for, I don't know if just this book, but that is his mandate. Be true. You need not fail. So what is being true? Is it being dependable or reliable, loyal, being good? I think being true is probably the most important thing with a marriage and a relationship and society. I think a relationship or a society of people who were able to give and serve, but also be true. Like, it seems like the best way to be, and it seems like this guy is saying, you can still protect yourself and things, but be true. Like, don't be so self-absorbed. And it's just very interesting how there's the word again, but it is. Everyone, and then he says, everybody fails, but I'm going to survive as long as I can. The old man sagged. His weird tone was gone. He just had his staff. He looked like an old prophet. And he walks off. This old man walks around a corner and he just vanishes, and he's gone. And that kind of rattles Covenant. And he's waiting at this stoplight, the only one they have in the whole town. And he's tempted, he's in a hurry. He's tempted to just go when it's a red light, but he doesn't. Remember, he's doing everything to the extreme of making sure he's safe. And when it turns green, he steps out. And then a cop car comes out from an alley. Probably not the same alley that the old man went through, but maybe. Comes through, squealing out, and it's like it's making a beeline, swerving with the speed of its turn. It then aimed straight at Covenant's heart. Remember, that's not the thing he wants to have amputated or extracted. He is in control of his own heart, and this police officer's car is directed not just at him, directly at his heart, which I think is a very poignant note. He's not supposed to hope, and now it's getting attacked directly. He hears the scream of brakes, and he crumbles. And this is interesting because he has the vague sense that he has fallen too soon, that he hasn't even been hit yet. And but he couldn't help himself, and this blackness radiates through the sunlight like a cold beam of night. He thought he was having a nightmare. Absurdly, he heard the old beggar saying, "Be true, you need not fail." And it ends with this. The darkness poured through, swamping the day, and the only thing that Covenant was sure he could see was a single red gleam from the police car, a red bolt, hot and clear and deadly, transfixing his forehead like a spear. It was going right to his heart, but the beam is right through his head. So, interesting, hey? What comments do you have about this? I am very curious. His invitation, or his the thing that the old man said to be true, and then chapter 3 starts with an invitation to a betrayal. So, very, very cool. This book does lend itself on a surface read, obviously, but I think there are so many intentional things being thrown in this. So, how long did that take us for chapter 2? It still took almost 40 minutes. So, I guess it's just meant to be a long one. The next one will be short. I'll try to make them short, but it's good to have this intro to trying to figure out Thomas Covenant. And if we all can just remember that, if we all just remember that this is the baseline for Thomas himself, then I think it'll help us understand more things that he will do, even if they will be reprehensible. But interesting to see this heart and mind sort of thing playing out, where it's directed at his heart but through his head. So interesting. So I'll say it a few more times. So talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.